Well, glad to have you back. This is Business Nigeria. President Bola Tinubu has taken a significant step towards revitalizing Nigeria's economy by inaugurating the Presidential Economic Coordination Council, PECC. The council, which the president himself oversees, comprises of diverse persons and group of individuals with expertise in various sectors, including the central bank governor, chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum, prominent industrialists such as Mr. Aliko Dangote, Mr. Elumelu. One of the primary objectives of this council is to ease the cost of doing business and reduce interest rates for micro, small, and medium enterprises and other sectors of the economy. Let's get talking. I introduced him earlier. He's an economist, a senior economist in tax, a senior manager and economist at PricewaterhouseCoopers, Mr. Abiodun Kayode-Ali. Mr. Abiodun, thank you so much. It's good to have you join the program this afternoon virtually.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me, Tulu. Happy to be here.
Okay. I'm sure you've read about this committee and what they are set out to do. My first question will be, what do you make of the composition of this team, the kind of persons on this list, and what are your expectations?
Okay, so I know the president has often been commended for being one who knows how to put together a right team. So looking at the list, the caliber of people on that team, I think that's a very good decision. If you look at the likes of those captains of industries, like the likes of Aliko Dangote, the likes of Elumelu, these are people who actually know their onions. I mean, they are people who have done very well in their respective fields, working together with government officials. I think it makes perfect sense. So they will be able to give appropriate advice on how to run the economy based on their own experience. We've seen instances whereby Aliko Dangote himself had actually spoken about some of the challenges he's facing in his business, especially the new refinery, challenges due to regulatory obstacles, as well as some of the policies that have been taken by government. You remember the comments he made recently about the high interest rates that we're currently facing in the country and how it kind of stifles the ease of doing business, especially for the MSMEs and business owners. And you've also heard the comments he made with respect to power, right? How lack of power actually impedes growth and development, right? So having him as a member of this committee will go a long way into helping the country. So I think it's actually a good team. And we have the likes of BismarkRewane. He's a renowned economist. So I think working with this team actually kind of portends a lot of hope and light at the end of the tunnel for Nigeria. So my expectations is that the timeline that they've set within 6 months to 1 year, right? The timeline is set for most of the targets that have been given. I think it does make a lot of sense, but I would advise that as much as possible, they set milestones because Nigerians are kind of impatient and we're looking for solutions as early as yesterday. So I would expect them to actually implement most of the advice they have been given, because you know one thing about government is that it's one thing to advise them, it's actually one thing to see the full implementation with no obstacles in place. So I would look forward to seeing the implementation of whatever recommendation this committee have.
And the president is saying that they have to report to him every month. While we look at that, the issue of fighting inflation with increased interest rates has been topical all through the week, especially when Africa's richest man mentioned it at the manufacturers conference. I think we also had that discussion over the phone. What do you make of that submission? And now he's also, I think, even the chair or the co-chair of this committee. What's your take with regards to this move by the Apex Bank? It's a monetary policy tool. What do you expect them to do?
Actually, that's the question. That's a very interesting question, and I'm sure a lot of analysts have said it clearly that the current problem or the current challenge we face in Nigeria is not coming from a credit supply, right? Our credit system is not as perfect as the developed economies who postulated the theory about trying to mop up excess liquidity by raising rates. That's not the current situation that we face, right? We know that we're currently facing a supply side induced inflation, right? We don't have enough production, we don't have enough output to meet the demands of people. So that's exactly what's the main cause for our inflation. So I quite agree with him that the monetary policy's decision to hike rates would definitely not be the solution to the problem. And Tolu, I'm sure you've seen in the news that despite the fact that the Monetary Policy Committee have been hiking interest rates to currently 26.25%, despite these hiking rates, we've seen money supply actually increase. Recent data from the Central Bank of Nigeria shows that money supply is somewhere within the range of 99 trillion, which is almost 100 trillion, right? So you can see that it's not even having the desired effects in terms of mopping liquidity. But one thing we do agree is that we've seen a lot of foreign portfolio inflows from institutional investors. Inflation, like you said, it's actually a global problem. Every country across the world is facing it, right? Even in the advanced nations, if you look at countries like France, countries like the United States, despite the fact that data and statistics is showing that there is a kind of decline in the inflation rate, we've still seen that most of the nationals are still unable to afford basic food items, groceries, right? They are complaining about the high cost of it, of these items, their mortgages, right? They are still complaining that it's high, despite the fact that statistics is giving a different result entirely. In Africa, on the other hand, despite the fact that you might say that our own inflation is not similar to theirs, because theirs, to be honest, the developed countries, most of their inflation came as a result of some of the policies that were taken during the COVID era, right? Some of the intervention rescue measures that were taken by the government, whereby lots of money were doled out into the system, right? So these are some of the things that caused their own inflation, and also the impact of the war in Europe, which actually led to an increase in the price of gasoline, right? But in Africa, in Nigeria especially, this should have actually benefited us in the sense that we are actually oil-producing nation, right? We should have profited from the increase in oil prices, but unfortunately we did not. If you look at food, right, food inflation is quite high. We all know that. But the unfortunate thing is that, or should I say the irony, is that Nigeria actually has a vast arable, has a vast amount of arable land, right? The data, the figures tell us that we have about 80 million hectares of arable land. And out of these 80 million hectares of arable land, only about 34 million hectares is being cultivated, leaving a deficiency of about 50 million hectares. So we have the potential to actually feed ourselves, not just ourselves, but also other nations around us. So it's one thing for Nigeria to actually put put its words to actions by actually taking up measures to actually ensure that we're able to take advantage of the opportunities that we have. So I do think to a large extent that what the government is doing from this fiscal angle can go a long way to actually solving our inflation problem, especially the food inflation. But one thing I will still say is that as much as possible, government needs to get out of the way, because it's one thing for government at the top, right, to actually come up with this committee, wonderful set composition of team, but it's another thing to actually see it trickle down to the ministries, the departments, and the agencies, right? As much as possible, there has to be that kind of sync, right? There needs to be a synchronization in what the government wants to do with what its agencies are also doing as well. We don't want a situation whereby by the time these policies are going to be implemented, we see a lot of kickbacks, right? We see officials trying to collect some money before actually doling out some of these funds that have been said to be given to the private sector, the MSMEs, right? Those in the agricultural sector. So I think government needs to ensure that all its players, all its agencies are actually in sync with its plan.
Brilliant submission. I must say, it's getting more interesting. Let's look at our currency, which many will say that in recent times, attractive U.S. yields and pressure, it's adding more pressure, to Nigerian naira. I don't know how that comes to you, looking at inflation-prone currencies like the Nigerian naira. The attractive U.S. yield is hitting us so badly. Is that true?
Well, so yeah, to some extent, yes, it is to some extent. But I think one thing that is more important, right, is to look at what we can do to strengthen the naira. And it's even part of the recommendations that, or part of the targets that were set by the president, being the chairman of this PECC. Right. The most important thing is, how do we strengthen the naira? As much as possible, we need to look at how we can increase our exports, right? How can increase our productivity? I think that focus is something that is key and something that we should all be thinking about. And one of the very first things we need to do is to actually improve our crude oil production. That's a quick win for me as far as I'm concerned, right? Because Nigeria is a country that has the potential to do somewhere within the range of 2 million barrels per day. And that's the target that has been set within the next 1 year to actually take us back to that 2 million barrels per day. If we're able to actually improve on that output, right, I think to a large extent, we will be able to enjoy an appreciation of the naira, because to think about it, 70% of our export is actually crude oil. Right. If we can increase that output, definitely we will be able to enjoy an increased amount of naira reserves. Right. Then if we now go to the extent of even being able to refine that particular crude output, to a large extent, we're even reducing the dependency on the dollar as a means of importing, right? So I think that's a quick win for me. The other quick wins that we have is look at some of the other products that we have, like agricultural products, right? Agricultural produce. We have lots of these in vast quantity, right? If you look at the different things we were doing prior to the discovery of crude oil, our textile industry, our manufacturing, if we can encourage most of these sectors to do, we will be able to, a large extent, be able to improve on the naira, right? The naira will be able to appreciate. So the currency, the state of the currency simply is as a result of our low productivity in the country. And it's also as a result of Nigeria not getting serious with doing things. That's the way I see it. So if you look at other countries across the world, if you look at Morocco, if you look at Kenya, these countries, these individual countries have particular items that they are well known for in terms of exports, right? Either in the export of motor vehicles, automobiles, in the export of flowers, in the export of tea. Nigeria has so many agricultural items that we can export. We need to get it right in terms of organization, in terms of refining these products to ensure that they are quality and to ensure that we're actually adding value to them at the point of exporting them. That's way to do. If we can do all this, I think to a large extent, we will be able to save the naira beyond merely looking at it in comparison with other currencies.
Mr. Abiodun, a lot of projections as we move on, and this is actually the second half of the year. 6 months gone, just very, very quickly. What are you expecting? Though some say we don't expect inflation to start to taper down, considering the fact that we see a hike in the price of energy costs and all of that. But in your own outlook and your work, what are you thinking? Maybe in a medium to short term, short to medium term, I beg your pardon.
Okay, yeah, thanks. So in the short term, I don't see it going anywhere soon in the short term, but I expect that towards the end of the year,
yes,
right? As we begin to improve on our food production, as we begin to improve on even our road transport system. If you look at some of the policies that the government has taken, they want to increase the hectares of land that is being cultivated, right? So as we begin to show an improvement in those areas, to a large extent, we will be able to address the challenges that come with food insecurity. Also, the fact that the government is actually taking serious the rehabilitation of a lot of roads transport system, which I think is quite key in ensuring that we're able to move most of these products from the farmlands to where they're actually being consumed with little or less losses. So I do think to a large extent, we should begin to see a deceleration on inflation, right? So we're going to see it get better over the course of the months, right, to come. So I think over the next few months, we should begin to see an improvement in inflation figures, and key of which, like I said, would deal with agriculture, storage, and road transport system. So I think things will get better towards the end of the year. And so I'm optimistic, right? So Yeah, that's what I think.
I like that. I like that. I like the optimism, and I take it up from you. And also, let me tell you that Mr. Albert actually asked after you thought you were live in the studio. He asked me to say hello to you, so let me do that on television. Take care. Enjoy your weekend. Mr. Abiodun Kayode-Ali, a friend of the house, is also senior manager at PricewaterhouseCoopers, economist and manager at senior manager at PricewaterhouseCoopers. Thank you so much for always being on the program. We wish you a great weekend.
Thank you, too.
All right, there. Well, let's talk markets now.